Horror games have always flirted with controversy, but these 10 titles pushed the envelope so far they were either banned or yanked off shelves worldwide. From dystopian tales of drug-fueled euphoria to survival games drenched in psychological torment, these aren't just terrifying to play. They rattled society itself. Imagine receiving spine-chilling phone calls in the dead of night with Hotel 626, or enduring the unapologetic brutality of Manhunt, a game so violent it became a lightning rod for moral outrage. Each of these games isn't just a test for your courage. They are a stark reminder of how far the medium and the minds behind it can push boundaries, leaving both players and critics unsettled. Hi, I'm Alina. Welcome back to my channel. Let's talk about Hotel 626, the iconic, spine-chilling, web-based horror game that mysteriously vanished from the internet. Released on October 31st, 2008, because what a better date to drop a horror game. This digital fright fest was brought to life by none other than Doritos. Yes, you heard that right. The same company, known for cheesy chips and nacho snacks, decided to dabble in a horror genre, and they did it to revive two discontinued flavors, black pepper jack and smoking cheddar barbecue. But let's clear the air. This wasn't some campy survival game where a rouge cheddar cheetah stalks you through a haunted snack aisle. No. Hotel 626 threw you into a terrifying, immersive nightmare, and it doesn't take long to realize this is the place you desperately need to escape. Here's the twist. You could only play the game between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. Why? To ensure you had the perfect creepy backdrop of real-life darkness. Of course, some clever players hacked the system by adjusting their computer clocks. But playing in the dead of night was part of the experience. What made Hotel 626 truly unsettling was its hyper-realistic style. Forget 3D avatars. This game used videos and photos of actual people. The result? A deeply immersive horror vibe that made you feel like the next victim in a found footage horror movie. Your goal was simple in theory, but terrifying in practice. Survive and escape. Along the way, you were hunted by ghoulish ghosts, a demonic baby, yes, really, and a psychotic hotel maid. Easy, right? Not so much. Especially puzzles like the infamous locked in a room with a starving madman sequence meant solving riddles before he escaped to devour you alive. But here's where things get really creepy. The game got a little too personal. It asked for your phone number before you started, claiming it was to enhance the experience. And it actually did, by calling you in the middle of the night with a pre-recorded message reminding you that you were still trapped in a hotel. Delightful, right? Then came the peace, the resistance of eerie, a sequence where you had to run from a chainsaw-wielding maniac by locating a photograph of yourself. If your webcam was on, the game would pull your face into the scene, displaying it in a photo as part of the escape route. But as you searched frantically for your face, you'd see dozens of other faces. These weren't actors, they were actual snapshots of players reacting to the same horrifying scenario, likely in the privacy of their own homes. Here's where it all unraveled. Turns out, Doritos didn't actually ask for permission to access players' webcams. Yikes! Critics and privacy advocates quickly raised alarms, pointing out the glaring risks of hackers exploiting this data. And then came the legal panic. To avoid a storm of lawsuits and a PR nightmare, Doritos abruptly pulled the game from the internet. So, while Hotel 626 wasn't officially banned, Doritos essentially banned themselves before their lawsuits could. A game ahead of its time in ambition, and in overstepping privacy boundaries, it remains a ghostly legend in gaming lore. We Happy Few whisks players away to an alternate 1960s England, where the streets are pristine, the colors are almost too vibrant, and every citizen wears an unwavering smile at least on the surface. This eerie utopia runs on joy, a little pill that promises perpetual happiness, while scrubbing away the messy truth of the past, and with them your very sense of self. Those who dare to stop taking joy, however, are branded as downers, cast out as pariahs, and relentlessly hunted by ever-smiling enforcers eager to rehabilitate them. Beneath the game's psychedelic hues and cheery facade lies a provocative question. What's the true cost of happiness when it's artificially manufactured? Spoiler alert. It's nothing short of horrifying. The story begins with Arthur Hastings, one of 3 playable characters, who stumbles upon an old newspaper clipping that reignites a flood of memories from a pre-Joy era. This revelation drives him to quit the drug, peeling back the layers of his hallucinatory bliss to reveal the harsh reality of Wellington Wells. On Joy, the town looks like a Technicolor dreamland. Off it, the illusion shatters into bleak dystopia, riddled with decay and despair. Here, the forced happiness of citizens feels suffocating. They march through their days in chemically induced euphoria, while the joy-enforcing bobbies grin unnervingly as they beat dissenters into submission. If you have ever watched Smile 2, you might have a visceral idea of what this could look like in real life. And trust me, it's not pretty. But We Happy Few doesn't shy away from its darkness. This game stirred controversy when it was temporarily banned in Australia, with authorities arguing that its portrayal of joy risked promoting substance abuse, mirroring real-world anxieties about drug normalization. Critics debated whether the game leaned too heavily into shock value, as its satire of enforced happiness hit uncomfortably close to home. Yet fans railed behind this message, insisting the game wasn't glorifying drug use, but offering a sharp critique of a world willing to sacrifice authenticity for a veneer of positivity. Ultimately, the ban was lifted in 2019. Its haunting portrayal of a society addicted to synthetic happiness resonates in a world where social pressures to stay positive can feel suffocating. By forcing players to choose between conforming to the crowd or facing the harsh truths of reality, We Happy Few delivers an unsettling challenge. Can happiness be genuine if it's imposed? And perhaps even more disturbingly, are we already dosing ourselves with our own version of joy? This game is a blend of unsettling dystopia and philosophical depth, makes it both a thought-provoking experience and a chilling cautionary tale. Imagine firing up your computer and stepping into the surreal, spine-chilling world of Phantasmagoria. This game wasn't just designed to entertain, it was crafted to haunt your dreams and keep you wide-eyed long after you logged off. Set against the backdrop of a sprawling, creaky mansion perched on a foggy coastline, the story pulls you into the life of Adrienne Delaney, a writer in search of creative solace. With her husband by her side, Adrienne hopes the isolation will spark inspiration. What she finds instead is a nightmare waiting to unfold. The mansion's history is as dark and twisted as its endless halls, steeped in a sinister legacy of its previous owner, a magician who dabbled in forbidden arts, leaving a trail of curses in his wake. What starts as eerie curiosity quickly spirals into a descent into terror. As Adrienne digs deeper, she uncovers secrets that refuse to stay buried. And just when she needs him most, her husband falls under the mansion's malevolent influence, transforming from a loving partner into a maniacal stranger. Love makes you crazy, they say. But this was something else entirely. One of Phantasmagoria's standout features was its groundbreaking use of full motion video, employing real actors to portray the characters. This added an unsettling layer of realism to every hair-raising moment, blurring the line between game and reality. Every horrifying scene became more visceral, more terrifying, and undeniably unforgettable. It's no wonder horror fans loved it so much. The live-action sequences didn't just make the scares hit harder, they also set the stage for future games like Hotel 626, redefining the way horror was experienced in gaming. Released in 1995, Phantasmagoria was an immediate lightning rod for controversy. Its unflinching depictions of violence, supernatural possession, and psychological torment earned it both fascination and condemnation. Critics blasted it for being too explicit, with some scenes deemed far beyond the limits of good taste. The now infamous head in a blender moment became a grotesque hallmark of the game's audacity, shocking players while prompting detractors to question whether they'd stumbled into a horror movie rather than a video game. Not everyone was thrilled. Australia outright banned the game for being too dark, citing its graphic content as a step too far. But as with most banned media, the controversy only fueled its legend. Fans embraced its daring storytelling and willingness to push boundaries, cementing Phantasmagoria as a cult classic. Nearly 3 decades later, it remains a hauntingly beloved cornerstone of horror gaming. A bold experiment that dragged terror out of the shadows and into the player's lap. And for better or worse, it forever redefined the limits of just how terrifying the games could be. Rule of Rose is a game that hides its darkness behind the deceptively innocent setting of an orphanage. But make no mistake, this is no place for children. The protagonist, Jennifer, soon discovers that being the newest arrival means she's now at the mercy of the Red Crayon aristocrats, a gang of children who rule this twisted world with their own bizarre sense of order. These aren't playground games with hopscotch and jump ropes. In their version, ritual sacrifices replace the squares, and the stakes are far from child's play. The aristocrats' games pull Jennifer into an escalating series of disturbing rituals, where she's both victim and unwilling participant. As the horrors unfold, you might find yourself wishing for the company of the kids from Lord of the Flies instead. Rule of Rose excels at psychological horror by letting much of the terror linger in the shadows, leaving players' imagination to fill in the blanks. The unsettling sense of a cult-like hierarchy pervades the game, with the children themselves becoming the architects of Jennifer's nightmare. Forget zombies or monsters. Here, the true horror comes from the cruelty of these young tyrants. Jennifer is forced into harrowing tasks involving cages, mutilated dolls, and animal sacrifices, each one dragging her further into their sinister games. As Jennifer endures these trials, fragments of her own traumatic past begin to surface. The story unravels through haunting rituals, eerie lullabies, and disturbing revelations, blurring the line between memory and nightmare. However, Rule of Rose isn't just infamous for its content, it's a game that sparked global controversy. While it leans more into psychological and violent themes than sexual ones, some critics argued that the game contained disturbing undertones involving underage characters. This ignited a firestorm of backlash, drawing the attention of journalists, politicians, and even the mayor of Rome. The European Union got involved, and in Italy, the game faced accusations of being dripping with perversion in every frame. The outrage didn't stop there. In the UK, political figures fueled the uproar, condemning the game based on rumors rather than facts. Despite the controversy, Rule of Rose eventually saw a limited release. However, it was banned or heavily restricted in certain regions, and its rarity today turned it into an expensive collector item. The combination of eerie children, cult-like rituals, and symbolic violence solidified Rule of Rose as one of the most provocative and divisive horror games ever made. Its legacy endures as a chilling reminder of how video games can explore the darkest corners of the human psyche. Manhunt is what happens when a horror game dares to push the boundaries of brutality and bleakness to their absolute limits. In this controversial cult classic, you step into the blood-soaked shoes of James Earl Cash, a death row inmate offered a grim, second chance at life. But let's not sugarcoat it. This isn't a redemption arc. Instead, you're thrust into the twisted world of a live-action snuff film orchestrated by a shadowy figure known only as the director. With his cold, detached voice echoing in your ears, he's both your captor and your puppet master, pulling every string to craft his gruesome masterpiece. From the moment Cash is dumped out of a prison van, the mission is clear. Survive. But survival in Manhunt doesn't mean sneaking away quietly. It's all about creatively dispatching the waves of violent gangs that hunt you down. Each group, from the masked maniacs known as the Smileys to the sinister and sadistic Hoods, is more flamboyant in its bloodthirst than the last, transforming the grimy cityscape into a macabre playground. The game's infamous murder with flair mechanic became its signature. Every kill is graded on a spectrum, from the brutally efficient to the grotesquely elaborate. The choice of weapons is a chilling catalog of depravity. Plastic bags, shards of glass, baseball bats, nail guns, each adding its own gruesome flourish to the executions. And the director? Oh, he lives for the spectacle, egging Cash on to deliver the most horrific kills possible, all for the sake of his art. The game was promptly banned in New Zealand, dismissed as grossly offensive, which, let's face it, is basically a marketing tagline for something this provocative. Australia wasn't far behind, pulling its rating almost immediately. In the UK, Manhunt briefly vanished from shelves after a real-life murder was controversially linked to the game. Acclaim later debunked, but not before stoking the fires of its infamy. Critics and moral watchdogs alike questioned whether Manhunt was even a game or simply an interactive horror film, masquerading as entertainment. Love it or loathe it, one thing's for sure. Manhunt made its mark, carving its name into gaming history with blood-soaked precision. Hatred is raw, unapologetic chaos distilled into a video game. From the start, it makes no effort to sugarcoat its premise. The protagonist, a nameless brooding figure with an unrelenting scowl, wakes up, stares into the mirror, and skips all pretense of affirmations or coffee. His morning routine? Grabbing an arsenal and deciding it's time to annihilate everyone in sight. You step into the boots of the antagonist, a nihilistic anti-hero dressed in a leather trench coat. His mission is as straightforward as it's sinister: the complete destruction of everything and everyone. Forget saving the world or even contemplating redemption. That isn't that kind of game. Hatred is a sandbox where the sole objective is to unleash as much destruction as humanly possible. While most games offer quests to protect cities or redeem fallen heroes, Hatred hands you an assault rifle and a grenade launcher with a smirk that says, "Have at it." Each level invites you to wreak havoc in suburban neighborhoods that might as well have banners reading, "Welcome, please destroy everything." The carnage isn't just encouraged. High scores reward your efficiency in turning quiet streets into chaotic war zones, transforming the town into the setting for the world's darkest block party. Unsurprisingly, Hatred sparked immediate and fiery backlash. Shortly after its debut on Steam Greenlight, it was pulled due to complaints that the game promotes wanton violence. The developer's response? A shrug and a cheeky, "Yes, exactly." The developers made their mission crystal clear: strip away the fake philosophical stuff that the games often use to justify violence. What's left is a raw exploration of destruction and human depravity. The controversy wasn't limited to online outrage. Hatred was banned in multiple countries, including Germany and New Zealand, and branded by many as irredeemably violent. Born in Saudi Arabia, Mariam made waves almost immediately after landing on the App Store. At first glance, it seemed like a harmless game, a simple story about helping a lost girl named Mariam find her way home. But what began as an innocent interaction quickly took a dark, spine-chilling turn. As players guided Mariam, she started asking questions. Innocuous at first, the inquiries soon became a little too personal. She would eerily reference trending news, as if she could read your mind, only to cap it off with a casual yet intrusive "Where do you live?" What was meant to feel like a gentle rescue mission soon morphed into something far creepier, leaving players wondering if they were helping a lost child or unwittingly entertaining a digital stalker. The further you ventured into the game, the more unnerving it became. Each step turned into a bizarre tug-of-war with Mariam's haunting curiosity, transforming the experience into a horror-fueled therapy session you never signed up for. The game's most unsettling twist: requests for location access. Whispers began circulating that Mariam wasn't just a game, but a tool for surveillance. The unsettling messages, eerily specific and intimate, fueled fears that this ghostly app might be tracking its players in real life. While no evidence ever proved it collected data, the eerie vibe and prying questions stirred up a storm of privacy concerns. In Saudi Arabia, the game's controversial nature drew the attention of worried parents and authorities alike. Critics accused Mariam of influencing children in harmful ways, with some even alleging that it promoted self-harm, though no evidence ever substantiated those claims. The outcry was loud enough to trigger swift action. Authorities banned the app and issued warnings, citing its psychological impact on young and impressionable players. It seemed Mariam's creators had succeeded all too well in crafting an experience that blurred the line between suspenseful gameplay and digital intrusion. In the end, Mariam cemented its legacy not just as a horror app, but as a cautionary tale. Sometimes the scariest thing of all isn't the ghostly voice in your ear. It's realizing you just gave your location to a fictional child with too many questions. Imagine this, a video game that feels like the result of binge-watching too many action movies on fast forward, where absurdity and chaos collide. That's Postal 2 for you, a bizarre, over-the-top journey into the life of the Postal dude, a guy just trying to survive his week with mundane tasks like buying milk, cashing a paycheck, and returning a library book. Sounds harmless, right? Think again. In Postal 2, you decide how these errands play out, peacefully or with a kind of unhinged violence that would make even an action movie blush. Flamethrowers, an absurdly sharp shovel, and mayhem are just the beginning. Set in a dusty desert that feels like a caricature of small-town America, the game practically begs you to embrace chaos. NPCs are quick to hurl insults if you so much as glance their way, and the streets are crawling with hostile groups. Rampaging protesters, angry fundamentalists. Simple tasks like going to the bank turn into gladiator-style showdowns. And then there's the humor. Dark, irreverent, and downright surreal. Health packs? Catnip. Need a silencer for your rifle? Slap a cat on the barrel. This is the kind of game where you can help but ask, who thought of this? Unsurprisingly, Postal 2 stirred up a firestorm. New Zealand outright banned it, calling it grossly offensive. Australia followed suit, citing extreme violence and animal cruelty. Even in the US, it faced backlash, with critics claiming it was corrupting the minds of the youth. The controversy didn't faze the creators. In fact, they leaned into it, proudly branding the game as a no-holds-barred playground for your darkest, most chaotic impulses. Love it or hate it, Postal 2 isn't just a game, it's a cultural moment, a fever dream, that dares you to push the boundaries of what's acceptable. Play at your own risk. The RPG visual novel hybrid throws you into a nightmare destined to test your mental stamina and maybe your sanity. You play Sakuri, a 14-year-old girl. Without a clue as to where she is, Sakuri quickly realizes she's in a world where everything has just one goal: to make her time here as torturous as possible. What sets Demonophobia apart is that it doesn't let you just get through the horror. It demands you watch it unfold in painstaking, pixelated detail. As if the silent, soundtrack-free gameplay wasn't ominous enough, the game makes every mistake lead to a new, disturbing scene. Each creature has its own gruesome surprise for Sakuri. These vary from decapitation to death by slime, which somehow manages to be even worse than it sounds. The game's design pushes you to experience each scene with a kind of love and attention to detail that could only come from a developer with a deep appreciation for Rayona-style brutality and gore. You could say that Demonophobia doesn't just want you to play it, it wants you to suffer along with it. By the time you reach stage 4, things really start to get weird. Sakura faces off against grotesque bosses like Asmodeus, and with every level the game finds new ways to make the whole experience progressively twisted. While the game was made in Japan with a lower age of consent, it unsurprisingly caused outrage outside of the country. Many countries banned it outright, not just because of the very questionable erotic scenes with a minor, but also because of the gore and its unapologetic way it served up horrific scenes without any clear purpose beyond shock value. Critics questioned whether it was a game or just a collection of gruesome animations in disguise. Still, Demonophobia has its loyal fans, mainly in Japan, who are drawn to its sadistic challenges and the dark thrill of surviving each level. Euphoria, the darkest entry on our list, is an 18-plus interactive visual novel game that walks a razor-thin line between psychological horror and boundary-pushing content. It leaves players to navigate an intensely disturbing plot that only gets darker the deeper they go. Set in an isolated, sterile, white room, the game begins with protagonist Keisuke and 6 other women waking up in captivity with no memory of how they got there. An anonymous speaker leaves them with a disturbing objective. Only through a series of twisted and degrading games will they survive and escape. Each game unlocks a door, forcing players to decide how far Keisuke and themselves are willing to go to escape this nightmare. It's a horror of the mind, with each task chipping away at the character's sanity and frankly the players as well. Instead of jump scares, Euphoria focuses on psychological torment, making the character's physical and mental suffering disturbingly vivid. Keisuke is told to grab and torment all the girls, most of who are also underage, in a room in order to escape. Throughout the game, it becomes clear that each scenario is part of a larger mystery involving Keisuke's own dark impulses, as he constantly battles with his desire to go too far. The storyline gradually reveals more about each character's background. The game does offer multiple endings, ranging from bleak to relatively redemptive. While Euphoria is classified as a mature X-rated game, its usage of underage girls, once again in Japan, makes the entire game even more unsettling and disturbing to play. Euphoria's extreme content drew criticism for both its disturbing and erotic subject matter and its graphic depictions of violence. Many critics argue that the game crosses the line that no game should go. In reviews, some players admit that Euphoria is like watching a car crash, gruesome, horrifying, but hard to look away from. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.